Evening, YouTube. Right, let's get Notepad out. Put that in there. Grab that. Right, see who's about tonight. Oof. Well, Conor McGregor's got arrested. Handed himself in 9 hours after the incident at the Barclays Centre. I've done a video on that. I think he's done as an MMA fighter in any promotion, let alone just UFC or Bellator. I think he's had it. As someone who's a sports fan and has seen many a sports meltdown and many a celebrity meltdown on the news, there are some troubling things that are going on with his behaviours. Very troubling things, Conor McGregor's behaviours and what's going on. So I'm deeply concerned about that. But we'll see what happens over the next coming weeks and months and see what happens. He was meant to have a return fight back in MMA at some point this summer with Lawton. Yeah, we can safely say that's out. But we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Eric Bristow died yesterday, darts player, age 60, in Liverpool. He was at a darts event and he had a heart attack and rushed to hospital and sadly died. It's the second sportsman this week who's died, the other being Ray Wilkins. So we've had two passings of some legends of their sports. And the Australian ball tampering cricket scandal continues. David Warner has now given his statement, and he's avoiding a lot of questions and a lot of answers to questions in his statements. And there are those who are defending him and for whatever reason, but I wouldn't be surprised if the authorities are very interested in what David Warner has to say about things, because I wouldn't be surprised if match or spot fixing or some kind of illegal betting was going on during that test series and he was involved because he was caught. But yeah, so a very interesting couple of days for sport. Conor McGregor's dominating the headlines for all the wrong reasons. This comes a few days after his title was stripped off him, and then he goes and tries to basically destroy a bus and gets arrested afterwards. So, but according to reports, he's got 3 charges of assault and 1 of public misdemeanor of some kind. So he's got 4 charges against him. That's quite serious. So it'd be more than a slap on the wrist, I would think. But anyway, hello to all. Put your questions in the chat section, and I'll do my best to answer them. We're only going to stay online for just over an hour or so. I'm not going to stay on late tonight. My shoe collection. My shoes are all downstairs. I am not getting my shoes. Why would I want to show shoes? Why? I have no shoes up here. Unless you're talking about motorcycle boots. And I don't think you really want to see motorcycle boots somehow. I mean, really? That's a very odd question. I mean, I've got some Air Maxes. I've got some New Balance. I've got some Adidas. All I've got to hand is my motorcycle boots, and I really don't think you want to see them. So they're not the most interesting things. They're just leather and they're boots. Odd behaviours. But anyway, have you got any other questions apart from my shoe collection? Because I don't see how that can be interesting for anyone, really. I've had some very strange questions on my live streams, but never about shoe collection. But, oh, you're gone. Anywho, back to what we've managed to do for the. We've got a lot of video ideas, and it's interesting. You know, Conor McGregor's dominated the headlines, and it's a bad image for UFC. So I don't think how they can have him compete in their promotion of MMA ever again. I just cannot see it happening. Cannot. I don't know how Conor McGregor can compete in UFC. There are those who are saying it is a publicity stunt, and if it is, it's gone horribly, horribly wrong. His friend Artem Lobov has been dropped from the card for Saturday's fight, but then the main event has been dropped because one of the fighters is not fit enough. So I think 4 fights in this MMA UFC 223 are now off. I don't understand why they're going ahead with the event, really. But it is what it is, so we have to see what happens. But I'm told, I think it's got completely out of hand. Let's see what's going on the news quickly. See if any other sports are always broken. Oh yeah, the Masters Golf is into day 2. That's hotting up. So we have to be and I'm really disappointed that it's Tiger Woods is struggling and Rory McIlroy is 1 shot off the lead in the Masters. Let's talk about. There's not a lot really going on. Yeah, Conor McGregor's got himself in a lot of trouble, so I can't see him having a career in UFC for much longer. So let's see what sports are doing. Oh, there's no one on the live stream tonight. That's a bit annoying. Apparently, Mercedes are struggling in testing and free practice for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So that's interesting. Is Ferrari are struggling in the free practice? Right, let's have a look. The playoffs, Elite League Grand Finals, to be shown on Sunday on the BBC. It appears that they're only going to show it on the website, which is really, really annoying. But there we go. But no, nothing really much is happening. Oh, stupid. Nothing much is happening on the sports news. Do you think the Blues will? No, I think it's against Chicago, and I think they have to go full chat at that because that is a rivalry, regardless of where the teams are in the respective seasons. I mean, Chicago have had a really bad season, but they want to at least finish on a high note. They beat St. Louis in the last game. I cannot see St. Louis resting any players unnecessarily because they're not guaranteed a playoffs. It's between them and Chicago, and there's 2 days left. They have to win and hope Chicago lose tomorrow, whatever it is. I think St. Louis have to go for it. Chicago beat them last time around. They had a big dip in form that was they're trying to get back from. They have to play full chat. They cannot afford to ease off Chicago. They've gone with Berube in goal, so that could be a sign of where they're at. But I would think Chicago would be aiming to beat their greatest rivals, their division rivals as well. The Blues have to go and win. Every game is vital. There's 2 games left. This is one of them. 1 game left. They have to win this game. It will be suicide if Yeo How you Tim Yeo, the coach, rests any players. I think that could be his job. Personally, I think it would be suicide for him to do so. But stranger things have happened. St. Louis were meant to be projected to be quite high up in the Central Division, and it's gone horribly wrong in the last 2 months of the season. They hit the skids at the wrong time. They brought it back somewhat, but resting their players would be a very strange option. But I've noticed something. There's no easy games in the NHL anymore. There's the odd season when there's that one really, really bad team who cannot buy a win. But there's no easy games in pro sports anymore. The thing is, the Blues, if they win tonight, that gives them that little bit of breathing space. It's just that extra 2 points. But it's going to be the fact that both these sides have cooled off towards the end of the season is really down to a variety of things. Both picked up their form lately, but I can't see the Blues wanting to. They have to go and win every game. Every game is a playoff game now. Every game has meaning. They have to take 2 points tonight. Tomorrow is a different kettle of fish, different style of play, a different team, a team that's equally as desperate. They have to take advantage tonight, and if they get that overtime point tomorrow, that completely throws it up in the air. But St. Louis are I think they're feeling the effects of that poor run they had when they had it. They were in the top three of the Central Division for the first half of the season, and they for some whatever reasons they slowed down, started losing a lot of games, and fell out of the top three of the Central Division and plummeted down the division, and are now struggling to get into the playoffs. It's hard to say if they rest players tonight. Tomorrow night's game will be just as crucial as tonight's game. St. Louis have to try and get 3 points out of 4. If they do rest players and they win, then it pays off. Florida, oh dear. It is going to be squeaky bum time. If they get in, that will be a miracle. That will be the true underdog story from where they were at the start of the season. They're paying for their bad start of the season. They are paying for their bad form in the first half of the season. Same with Arizona. Arizona's record since January the 1st is the 8th best in the NHL. If the season was a shortened season, for example, like we had 3-4 years ago with the lockout, Arizona would be in the playoffs. Florida would be in the playoffs. Their records since January the 1st have been immense. The thing is, they're paying for their bad start, but they are one of the on-form teams going into the in the stretch. It's doable, highly unlikely. They did win last night. That helps them. But the New Jersey Devils won as well. The only team that they can now unseat is, I think, the Flyers. And I think the Flyers have to have something really catastrophic to happen for it to actually go Florida's way. But it is doable. The problem is they're leaving a lot of. They had a poor start to the season, and this seems to be a regularly occurring theme for Florida. As they seem to start very, very slowly, and then they have to make up ground on teams above them. So it is what it is, but they can do it. I mean, it's not impossible. It's just very, very difficult. Right, some good ice hockey questions there. Playoffs start next week, so that's going to be very, very interesting. Playoffs with couple of teams trudging to get in. Right, let's just check a few bits and pieces. Gain another subscriber. Nice of them. Okay. No, this is going to be just broken. Conor McGregor's due to appear in court, so his week gets worse. I don't know what he's going to do. But we've had some interesting stuff. So let's see what's happening on all the sports websites while we wait for some more viewers to come in. So for those watching a replay, we've had a couple of questions so far. Nothing major. So yeah, Conor McGregor is due to appear in court. Paul Pogba was apparently offered to Man City in the January transfer window. That's an interesting one. Ferrari are topping the tables in F1 free practice in Bahrain. There's some rugby on at the moment. Sale are playing Wasps, Edinburgh are playing Ulster. So if anyone's interested in the rugby, that's what's going on tonight. Let's see what else is happening with this Conor McGregor story, because apparently he's got a court appearance coming up. So we let's have a look. Nothing new there. No, some interesting stories on the internet, sports-wise at the moment, but is what it is. There is, what can you say, really? Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, just whack them in the chat. I'm just going through all the sports updates on the news, because there's stories breaking all the time. Last night's live stream happened when Conor McGregor was actually doing his meltdown in Brooklyn. So that broke whilst we were on live stream. The Liverpool Champions League game against Man City, that broke while we were on live stream. All the goals going in. So my live streams, things seem to happen, which is really, really funny actually. But no, if you've got any questions, whack them in the in the chat section. I'll do my best to answer them as best I can. I'm just going through the Twitter at the moment, see what's happening, see if anything else happens. There's all sorts going on at the moment. But we've got all sorts. There's all sorts going on at the moment. So yeah, but feel free if something's because the England will. Yeah, I've heard that song. It hasn't been greatly advertised over here on BBC, which is the British Broadcasting Service. They only started really pushing the adverts a couple of days ago. I'm surprised it's 0-0, but Wales have actually started their qualifying campaign very, very well, and therefore they are also a team on form. Phil Neville's the new manager. He had a rocky beginning with people questioning his appointment as manager. So I feel sorry for Phil Neville. He's been put in a position where he shouldn't have been. I think they should have handled the PR better. But last night's live stream, we were having a discussion as we are, and Conor McGregor did his stuff. He has now been arrested, which is interesting. He's been charged with 3 counts of assault and one of a public misdemeanor offence. So read into that what you will. But yeah, how was Melbourne anyway? Melbourne nice and sunny, because it's not too bad here for once. From what I read, he's been charged with 4 felonies, but the main event fight with his main rival in it, Habib, whatever his name is, against the other guy, has been cancelled because the other guy is not medically fit. 2 other fighters were injured in the altercation. His training partner's been thrown out of the event and is not allowed to compete, and his match has been dropped. So this UFC event, I'm surprised they've carried on going ahead with it. This is a bad image for mixed martial arts in general, and this is not Conroy's first instance of doing something really stupid around major events since he last fought, which was over 2 years ago. There's been issues with Bellator, which is the second biggest promotion of MMA. He got inside the cage octagon while there was a fight in progress because the guy had been officially knocked out, and there was issues there, and he started having an altercation with officials there. He's done this. This is not the behaviours of a man who's with it. So there's a few issues with Conor McGregor at the moment, but he handed himself in after 9 hours. He handed himself in about 9:10 p.m. local time, which over here is 3 o'clock in the morning UK time, and allegedly he's now got a court date as well. So I think it's going to be a little bit more serious than a fine and a slap on the wrist. I think the New York State prosecutor is going to come down quite heavy on him, and UFC itself, this has been a really bad couple of days for him. This follows on from McGregor's foul-mouthed, abusive. The day before, he'd been stripped of his title that he hadn't defended for 500 days. He then went on Twitter doing a Donald Trump, and he just wrote vile stuff on Twitter. He wrote some vile stuff on Twitter about UFC. His friend Artem Lobov, who's also his training partner, was meant to be having a fight on the undercard, and it's not unusual for an ex-fighter or a training partner to support their friend at an event like this. It's the fact that he wasn't scheduled to appear. He gate crashed the press conference after it had finished. He was told to. Which that footage is not available. They've seen the UFC been very, very careful to get rid of that footage and not release that footage, as far as I'm aware. But once he got into the underground car park, all hell broke loose. But he attacked the bus with a metal barrier, which he normally put up for marathons and stuff. A dividing barrier. He went for it with that. He tried to go grab fire extinguishers. He grabs a couple of steel chairs. He really. This is not the antics of someone. And there's people out there, and I've seen on other YouTubers, and I've seen on Twitter, and I've had discussions with people about this at the pub, and I've seen that people saying it's publicity stuff. No, it's not. It's a deranged lunatic. Conor Hellebuck, yes, he has tied the most wins by an American-born goalie in a season. He should be in the Vesna conversation for me. He has to be in the Vesna conversation. He's played enough games. He's got enough wins. I'm surprised he is not higher up the Vesna conversation list, but exceptionally underrated. He had a bad year last year, but I think that's because he was young and he was thrown in because Pavlek wasn't good enough. Hutchinson, I think, hasn't developed as much as the Jets would have liked. So, but this year, Hellebuck has really brought his game on. He's developed his game. He's worked very hard at his weaknesses. There's still some weaknesses there, but he's working exceptionally hard. He deserves to be a Vesna nominee for me, or at least get into the conversation. I think the reason why he's not in the conversation more is because where he plays. Manitoba is not the centre of the universe for Canada. It's Toronto. If you play for Toronto, they'll be banging his drum every day of the week. They'll be really pushing, how good he is. They'll be talking all about him because he plays in Winnipeg. I've never been to Canada. I would like to go, but from everything I've read and seen about the Canadian media, there seems to be a big black hole in the middle of Canada where it comes to sports coverage, and they only focus really on the Toronto metropolitan area. I understand the media is based out of Toronto. I understand all the major TV stations and newspapers are based out of Toronto, but I think his underratedness, I think the team being underrated, that could be to the advantage of the team in the playoffs. But yeah, he's done exceptionally well this season, exceptionally well. And I think next year he's got to step up and keep doing this development, and they've got to look at Comrie and Hellebuck as the starting tandem. Hutchinson is third choice. Mason, I don't know how he can stay there. He's been injury prone and useless. Steve Mason, I think, was a waste of a contract. Right. Anyway, next questions though. There's some good, interesting little questions there. Very interesting little questions. I think Wolves are better prepared for life in the Premier League rather than Cardiff. Cardiff have been too up and down. Wolves, when they got in the Premier League last time, stayed in the Premier League for a good several seasons. They seem more stable, better run off the field as well. They also, in the League Cup, took Man City to extra time and didn't concede any goals in regulation time. I think Wolves are far better suited to life in the top tier of English football, simply because they've been there before. I know Cardiff have been there before, but when Wolves were up because Wolves have been in the Premier League several times. When they were last up in the Premier League, they stayed there for several seasons and just had one bad season, and that caused them to be relegated. Wolves, to me, seem the best equipped team in the Championship to cope with the Premier League by a long way. A long, long way. I've seen a few Wolves games this season, and highlights. They play a style of football that I think a lot of Premier League teams are going towards. But we'll have to see what happens next season. Cardiff, I think, will struggle. They always seem to struggle with the step up in division. Premier League standard, they just can't quite fully get their game suited to Premier League style football. But no, that's an interesting question. There's some rugby on the TV as well, but the season is all the seasons now are tailing off. These are the run-ins now. So rugby union and football and ice hockey, they're all in the run-ins now for the end of their seasons, and it's all getting really, really interesting. And we'll just have to see how every side does going forward. That was a good question. A good point. But no, I think Wolves are better prepared for life in England's top tier by a fair margin to other teams. But we had to see how they invest in the summer as well, and what investments the promoted sides in all the leagues make in the summer, what transfer moves are made, and how teams go about strengthening themselves. But no, some very interesting questions there. I mean, a lot has happened in the last couple of days. I mean, Eric Bristow passed away last night, just after the live stream ended. It broke that Eric Bristow passed away at the age of 60. And for those who don't know who Eric Bristow is, he was a darts player in the 80s and 90s, and he was yes. No, the Man City one, for some reason, the police changed the route of the bus 2 hours before they were due to drive. It was the longer route around to Anfield. Had they gone the normal way to Anfield, there would have been no problems. For some reason, and Man City claimed it was because there was a building site en route. It added an extra 20 minutes to the journey time, and that's what happened. Everything has gone a bit nuts. Seriously, but this week has been or the last 3 weeks has been an interesting time for all sports. We've had the cricket scandal, which we know about, and we've covered a lot and we've discussed a lot. But in the last couple of days, we've had Ray Wilkins and Eric Bristow pass away within 24 hours of each other. And I literally found out about Eric Bristow as we finished the live stream. As the live stream finished last night is when it was released that Eric Bristow had passed away. But no, what happened in Liverpool has happened many times before. And the police felt they had to change the route because there was a building site en route on the normal route they would have taken, and they feared that hooligans could gain weapons, which I find highly chronic because a building site in the middle of the week has people working on it. So the police have to take some blame, but Guardiola's sarcastic comments as he got off the bus, basically slagging off the security staff. The security staff at the stadium can't do anything. Their job is to secure an arena. You cannot expect security staff to secure the whole bloody route because they have to secure 60,000 people or 40,000 people, I think. So Guardiola's comments haven't helped. Klopp has been very, very fair in his assessment in the fact that he's not happy with the it's police matter. So Guardiola is the police would obviously advise the security company and vice versa on what their assessments are. Whenever you have a major public event, there are threat assessments. I've got friends who work in the police. I've got friends who work in security. You do a threat assessment on a big public event like this. Guardiola's comments don't help, and they're probably going to inflame things on the return leg. The return leg is just going to be just as bad. UEFA are going to sanction Liverpool, but if Man City do it, then it all throws it up in the air. Doesn't take anything away from how good Liverpool were on the field. Man City were absolutely hopeless, but it's not the first time an incident like that has happened. Not just in English football, but European and South American football. It's happened multiple times. But the fact that the police felt at the last minute when they've had a good couple of weeks to plan this and be prepared for it. As soon as the draw was made and they knew they were going to play each other, as soon as they won their last rounds of matches and they knew they were going to play each other, there was a good, I think, 3 weeks to a month. The police had ample time to work out, okay, there is something here. Oh, yeah, no. Italian football, it has a lot of political connotations in Italian football. You have the far right and the far left, and that gets dangerous. And as someone who's spent a lot of time in Italy and read up on Italian history, just type in on Wikipedia the years of lead, and you can understand why Italian football teams have to use bomb-proof buses or have higher levels of security, is because people do tend to try and take shots at them and blow them up. It is what it is. Obviously, some fan bases take it a lot further than others. English football's not immune from this, but Conor McGregor just tops off a very shocking period. I think March and April have been two very shocking. Well, we're only 6 days into April, and it's already been the most mental April of sport I've ever seen. We're only 6 days in, or 7 days for you. We're only a week into April, and it's already going tits up. March was exceptionally. A lot of things happened. I mean, Conor McGregor just tops the lot off because it distracts from all the good things that have happened in sport. The Commonwealth Games is not getting spoken about at all. I don't know what your view on the Commonwealth Games is, being an Australian, but it's not being really well promoted over here in the UK. UK athletes from all the Conor McGregor's behaviour over the last couple of years has been quite concerning for me. That is not the signs of a man in control of what he's doing. And when I did the video, I've done a video on Conor McGregor's incident, and use of drugs has been mentioned. Maybe not steroids, but being under the influence of narcotics has been mentioned. Also, you've got to look at the people that surround themselves around these entourages. Some of them are not the nicest people. Interesting career move from Conor McGregor, wouldn't you think? In my opinion, I don't think the promotion UFC will. I think they might terminate his contract. The guy who runs UFC has basically said as much. If this is some kind of publicity, it's gone horribly, horribly wrong. Now, I don't know what's. Well, he's got a court appearance now. He has actually been officially charged with 4 to 5 offences. He is going to be in court. He could plead no contest. He could plead guilty. He could plead innocent. But the evidence is there, and it's in the public domain. It's damning. What we have to be careful of, and what I have to be careful of, as a YouTuber and as someone who provides content and discusses things like this, is it's now an ongoing legal investigation now. So what's on the camera footage does show Conor McGregor doing some pretty gnarly. It's only a couple of minutes of chaos. You see the bus preparing to leave. You see it preparing to leave. You see another bus in there, another bus in there with other people on, and he's looking for which bus a certain individual is on. You can insert name of fighter here, or insert name of agent, or insert name of person there. And he's looking at both buses, and he then decides to get the guardrail, a fire extinguisher. Somehow he finds a steel chair in the bottom of Barclays Arena in Brooklyn. Yes, he finds a steel chair, and then there's other missiles thrown. Something hits the bus window, glass flies in. Michael Chiesa is one of two fighters who's got he had facial lacerations. Another fighter had an eye injury. I think 4 fights have now been cancelled at this UFC event for various reasons, including the 2 injured fighters. So this UFC event, I don't know how it well, it depends on multiple things. When you're normally arrested in America, I think they do a tox report, so they will breathalyze and take blood tests to see if you're on anything. But no, I don't. Something is very, very wrong here. And in the last 3 weeks in sport, we've had many, many things happen, and some of them make me concerned about. Okay, cricket, oh no, Bellator, the other promotion, won't have him. He's having legal ongoings with them. I think they're suing him or threatening to sue him because he was at a Bellator event in Dublin, and his mate was fighting, and his mate is winning the match, knocks the guy down. It looks like the guy's knocked out. He charges into the octagon at the Bellator event in Dublin last year, and then he struck an official, and then he caused a fight there. Not as bad as this, and obviously he's done this. I don't know what happens, but I have to be careful of how. I don't think. No, I don't think even. No, I don't. I agree with that. I think TNA and WWE, or Impact as it's now called, the 2 wrestling promotions, the 2 big ones, or Ring of Honor, the other wrestling promotion, you would have to be mad. Although Vince McMahon is completely insane. Vince McMahon might, because he's got Ronda Rousey, he's got other MMA stars who've been on or are on his roster. I don't know. I don't know. It's overshadowing the Commonwealth Games. This news. It's all over mainstream media. It's exploded on the online media. Now the print media has been slightly a bit more cagey about it. But no, I don't know how he can. But this is the issue of why I'm not a big fan of boxing or mixed martial arts anymore. It's because they're not looking after the competitors and the participants enough. They don't, and something's gone wrong here. The people advising him are not advising him in the right way. Oh no, they will. They will do. I wouldn't be surprised if WWE wants to do that. But here's the thing: UFC, I think, has peaked in its popularity. I think Bellator is not getting the viewership it should. So the MMA promotions have reached a point now where they're not getting in. They're not attracting any new viewers. The last 10 years, there was a big surge in growth. 20 odd years ago, it was seen as a niche underground thing, and it had a surge in growth in the last 10 years. I think it's now peaked, and I think people will start turning off because you've got to think that the welfare and the well-being of the athletes is clearly not being looked after. He's becoming more and more erratic in the so-called publicity stunts or the actions he does. He's completely lost it, and I can't see how he. What does he? What else does he do? What's his other marketable skills? I mean, he's a trained plumber, and that's about it. Oh, look. the thing is, I find it funny that Australia took it so long to allow it to come there. Considering that New Zealand's bred just across the Tasman, loads of boxers and MMA fighters, I am surprised it has taken as long as that for Australia to allow it to come to their shores. But at the same time, Australian sport's got its own problems, and Australian society's got its own issues, which are linked to the sport in a way. They go in hand. The various sports in Australia need to make. That's because you're a federation of states and territories, much like Canada, much like the US. Yeah, and it's not just the weird rules. You've got to accept that states have to have some, some control over their local laws and customs. But what I find worrying, what Australia's got an issue with is their sports stars doing drugs and alcohol. Hello, the Australians have got an issue with their athletes having alcohol problems a lot of the time, drug problems, and steroid problems. That's three things. Then the cricket team is a mess, as we know. But Australian sport's got a lot of structural issues. So Australia's got to focus on that more than bothering what's going on with a international sports promoter. They've got to focus on themselves and go, what's gone wrong with XYZ in this sport, or why has this happened? I mean, we've had UFC events over here in the UK. They don't get as many views as you think. I think UFC has reached its peak, and I think Conor McGregor has done untold damage to the brand and to the company. But we'll see what happens. He's got a court appearance. See, I didn't know that the A League had problems. I knew it had issues with a rise in football violence, but Australian sport has got a lot of issues as a whole. The whole country's got to look at its sporting culture and how sports are organised, how they're governed, who's accountable for what. Australian sport needs to seriously look at itself from top to bottom, because your so-called Olympic legacy from Sydney is not there. There are a lot of issues in Australian sport that are being ignored, either willfully or just through general incompetence. So therefore, but it's the Commonwealth Games. It's not getting the coverage it should get or the limelight it should get because, well, Conor McGregor's done his stuff, and the Australian cricket team have done their stuff. There's been a lot of negatives in sport, and I think that's a shame. But it's also the time of year it's taking place at the Commonwealth Games. It's taking place a little bit earlier than it normally would. And for me, that's too close after the Winter Olympics, just over a month and a half ago. I think, I don't know why they've done it in April, but it is what it is. The organisers have organised it for April. We have to make do with it being in April. I've never heard of most of those kind of summer-based games take place in June to August, maybe early September. I've never heard of a Summer Olympics or a Commonwealth Games or a World Championships track and field taking place in April. So I'm very surprised by the way they've timed it, but that's down to the planning committee of Gold Coast and down to the organisers of the event. But there is a lot going on at the moment in other sports that are overshadowing the Commonwealth Games. And some people are questioning, is it still relevant? I think it is, because there are world-class athletes who compete at both the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics. And I think 60% of the medals won at the last Olympics in the summer were Commonwealth athletes. So I think 8% of the participants or something were Commonwealth athletes in the last 3 Olympic Games. So I don't know how it's not relevant. I'm very surprised by England Wales being 0-0. They nearly sold out St Mary's though. St Mary's in Southampton, they nearly sold it out for this game, which is a good start in the right direction for women's football. I still think there are long ways to go, but we'll have to see. I think that's Phil Neville's first competitive match in charge. He hasn't lost it. People are going to say, "Oh, well, they weren't good enough." Well, it's his first competitive match in charge out of 3 matches he's had with them, and he's playing and they're playing against a good side. So that's an interesting result. Though I was hoping that England would win that, carry on the development of the side. But it is what it is. But that's a good habit for women's sport, though. That they are making strides, but again, not well covered. It should be at Wembley, not at St Mary's, but that's another thing. And they could have. I don't even know how how the FA advertises its tickets because they don't seem to have any TV adverts or billboards. So I don't know what their advertising strategy is. But until literally 3 days ago, I wasn't even aware there was a match on. That is how badly advertised the whole thing is. But no, interesting stuff coming out. All right, it's been quite a quiet live stream tonight, so but I'll keep the questions coming, and then I think I'll call the live stream and end at about 9:20. So we'll go for we've been going for 46 minutes, so I'll go for an hour and then see where we're at questions wise and viewership wise, and then take it from there. But no, I'm not. I am surprised the Commonwealth Games is taking place when it is. I'm not surprised it's in Australia, not at all. I have nothing against Australia hosting the Commonwealth Games, but the timing of it, in the time of year it's in, I think could also be affecting how many people are watching it. I think that's part to do with TV money and the TV rights, because obviously the World Cup in the summer for the football. But we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days at the Commonwealths, and see if the coverage improves, because it hasn't been great over in the UK. It's been pretty poor, to be honest. I know I remember the Commonwealth Games in Manchester in 2002, and I've got a commemorative coin from that. I don't know what it is. I remember the Commonwealth Games 4 years ago were really well organised in Scotland, in Glasgow. They really advertised it very well. Delhi as well. This one in Gold Coast, I don't know what the organisers, why they've hosted it in April. I don't know why the TV advertising in the UK at least has been poor. It would be nice to see better advertised, better promoted. But we'll have to see. I mean, this is another issue. Firstly, it's in April, and secondly, I did not know that the public transport was so bad. You would think they've had, I think, 7 years to prepare for this event. Australia's hosted many events. Last year, you had the Rugby League World Cup, so you would think they would have had an idea and they would have got it right. You would have thought they would have had some test events to make sure it was right. And Gold Coast is a very popular area of Australia for tourists and locals to go and surf, and it's a tourist area. It's very well developed. You would have thought they would have just slightly upgraded the transport links, done a couple of test events, like, for example, hosting, let's say, the Australian Athletics Championship qualifiers there. Excuse me. Or hosted an international, like a boxing match or some kind of big event. And I'm very surprised that you see, we're not getting this kind of news over here in the UK. So obviously the Australian media are now got something else to focus on other than the cricket team. This is where I think the Commonwealth Games is still relevant. It's still relevant. And clearly India has had some benefits from Delhi 8 years ago. But clearly Australia have made a big ham-fisted attempt at getting this right, but the coverage and the press aren't really covering it that much. The last couple of weeks has been the Australian cricket scandal, and we've had two famous British sportsmen pass away in the last couple of days, and we've had some interesting European Champions League football. They haven't really been interested in the Commonwealth Games, which I think is a shame. Also, the Commonwealth Games, they didn't. They should have done the opening ceremony on a weekend. They decided to do it in the week, which I find odd. The whole timing of the whole Commonwealth Games is odd, but it is what it is. Can't complain. But last night, I had an interesting conversation with someone, which I'll get to in a bit. Well, here's the thing. The Australian police would have looked at the threats against Australia. They would have looked at those militant groups, or those terrorist groups, or those whack jobs, those political groups who had a thing against Australia. They wouldn't have been looking at the wider picture. They've been looking at local threats, protesters. Australian Republicans might want to make a protest saying we don't want to be part of the British Empire anymore, things like that. But it is very interesting. But these drills happen a lot, and they release them long after the event to public knowledge. But last night, my friend Shane is from South Africa. No, my friend Shane's from South Africa. He's my friend's stepfather. We were talking about the cricket and David Warner's statement, and we got discussing our favourite cricketers. So I might actually do some looking at the stats of cricket players such as Jack Callis, Brett Lee, Gillespie, McGrath, Freddie Flintoff, Rahul Dravid, Sourav Ganguly. I might actually, because me and my friend Shane are very into our cricket. Then also towards the end of the evening, there was an Indian man who works for Avis, the car rental company. He was obviously over here on business, and he asked me for a cigarette lighter to borrow. And we got talking, and it turns out that he also, he's from Delhi, and he's mad for cricket. And then we got discussing the current issues with the Australian side, and he was less sympathetic than many people I've seen or heard on the internet, in the fact that he will accept that there were darker forces at play, and he will accept that there is something far more interesting to come out from David Warner. And every discussion I've had about the Test match, the ball tampering, David Warner's name is the name that I think people will remember from this scandal. And I believe personally, and I think there's going to be more to come out about this ball tampering than just three blokes ball tampering the ball to either get the ball changed or to give the bowlers an advantage. I think there are other forces at play, because David Warner, the whole Test series, David Warner was behind a lot of the antics Australia did, and for a good several years. And there's things that are worrying me about the game, and looking at some games and how they were played out, because I'm looking at the form book, and that Australian side should have won that test series, not the South Africans. But that's just me, and we'll have to see what comes out in the next days, weeks, months. But no, it did give me an idea. My mate Shane did, we were comparing players, our favourite players and our least favourite players. And I'm going to have to look at Jack Callis's stats. I think Jack Callis may be the best all-rounder cricket has ever seen, but we shall see. But I'm looking at doing a lot of cricket videos. I need to do more of them. The last few days they've been exceptionally popular. No, I think Ponting, he's a blast from the past. Yeah, I still think Jack Callis was better. Jack Callis scored more runs. and was a bowling all-rounder. He took less wickets, but his runs and his catches in the field make up for his less wickets taken. They come out at about, if you work out era to era, because Jack Callis comes along later, and it is easier to score runs and slightly harder to take wickets now than it was 20 years ago at the end of Ian Botham's career, 25, 30 years ago. But it is very, very interesting. I mean, but then you've got tail enders who can bat as well. I mean, don't forget Jason Gillespie got 200 against Bangladesh as night watchman. So we have to look at a variety of players. And for me, they're going to have to be past players. And then I can do his bowling average, amount of test wickets, amount of runs, 50s, 100s, and his average on the bat. And we can then work out who is the best. Yeah, you've got a fast bowler who can bowl average about 85 mile an hour, who can also open the batting, or bat as night watchman, or bat in the middle order. He could bat anywhere in the lineup, and it wouldn't affect the team because you had that bowler. But then we got onto the topic of the players who disgraced themselves and who've fallen from grace in the game, and that is something else that I think needs to be looked at, because players like Sreesanth and Makaya Ntini are two examples. Ntini from South Africa and Sreesanth. They're two interesting examples of players who've fallen from grace and now will never play cricket ever again because of their crimes. And Kazim Omar, yeah, no, there are loads, there are plenty. But we're going to write this down. We're going to do some cricket videos. I will come up with the videos I will do on players I have watched. I'm not going to do videos on players I've never seen play, because that's before my generation. That's before me. I can understand you guys would want me to do videos on Viv Richards and some of the West Indian greats from the 70s, and maybe some of the players from the 80s, such as Ian Botham. But because I haven't seen them actually physically play, it would be wrong of me to do videos on before my time. Yes, now Sreesanth, I liked him as a bowler. This is the thing. I think he brings something to the team where, when you select him in your bowling lineup, the opposition know this guy is a character, and it can go one of two ways. If you were to sledge him when he's batting or fielding, or whenever he's coming to bowl, and you're sledging him back, he might raise his game. On the same token, he could also completely. But he did disgrace himself. He wasn't very popular because he was one of those mavericks. As we've seen in other sports in the last couple of days, such as Conor McGregor doing what he does, mavericks gain attention for your sport. But Sreesanth and RP Singh, as a bowling tandem with Imran Khan, I think, yeah. No, with Zaria Khan, sorry. Zaria Khan, RP Singh and Sreesanth as your three fast bowlers, that is pretty an intimidating lineup. And Wolves are winning 1-0. I don't like Cardiff. But you got my favourite bowling lineup for India was Zahir Khan, Sreesanth and RP Singh. If they're coming in and belting fast paces from between 80 and 90 mile an hour, you know you're going to be in a test match or a one day or a T20. It doesn't matter what form of the game you're playing. Those three guys were brilliant bowlers. It is a shame that Sreesanth did what he did, and I'm not surprised he was no one really went to war with him and fought for him when he actually got caught. But at the same time, what he was doing deserves a lifetime ban. It doesn't matter how good a person you are if you do that. I was very disappointed with that final thing he did, the betting and the match fixing. I was deeply upset as a fan, because what he could do with the ball. Azim Akram. Oh God, yeah, good player. Another good player, Lasith Malinga. I remember watching his first Test match for Sri Lanka against England on my study leave during my exams. Because I went to boarding school, I didn't have to go in on Saturday. I had study leave, and I deliberately went in because we had Sky Sports at school, and I didn't have pay-per-view sport at home. And watching Malinga topple English wickets was an amazing sight. Lasith Malinga, he's my favourite bowler, but how do you say his name? Bumrah. Yeah, Bumrah. No, I haven't heard a lot about him over here, but we'll find out in the summer. I do hope I see him play in the summer. That will be very, very interesting in a couple of months' time, because England's winter series has been terrible. The last 5-6 months have been, well, since September it's been shocking for England. So it'd be nice to see an interesting test between India and England. That'll be exceptionally interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. But no, in all seriousness, no. That how many players have been caught? We have to look at cricket match fixing and how many players have been banned. I'm going to have to do a video on that because that makes it exceptionally interesting match. I might actually do 11 videos on 11 my favourite 11 players and make a starting 11 cricket team. There will be unfortunately some English players in there, but I might whack in a couple of Australians, South Africans, and Indians in there. But for me, the best player I've ever seen play, hands down, Brian Lara. I have never seen a person bat like Brian Lara. Everyone's got their favourite player, but mine's Brian Lara. But I'm gonna have to do player profiles and see what happens with that. But we'll have to see what happens in the summer. I'm definitely looking forward to the Test series. I really, really am. We'll have to see who comes out best. I think some of the Indian fast bowlers might have an interesting time. We'll have to see how the Indian fast do. The spin bowlers will always get spin, but we'll have to see how the Indian fast-paced bowlers do on English wickets, and then we can work out how good they really are. But fantastic series lined up, and if this Bumrah is as good as he's projecting to be, this could be a series to really test his mettle against, abroad, outside India. It'd be very, very good to see how he performs and what his economy rate is as well. Just because he could get 5 wickets, we've got to look at his economy weight. I don't know if how many more tests Anderson's got in him. That's the problem. I think Anderson is on the downco of his career now. He's the 4th best bowler of all time. He's in the top 5 best bowlers of all time, but I think he's running out of mileage. I don't know how much longer he can keep this intensity up. I mean, he's been going for nearly at the top level for nearly 20 years. I mean, that's gonna have taken its toll. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, Virat Kohli he has got an attitude on him. That'll be very, very interesting to see, what happens with the sledging now that what's happened with Australia. That'll be very interesting to see if Virat Kohli, how he behaves, because he can sometimes. No, Anderson can still swing the ball. It's just that his body is getting to the point where how effective is he going to be with being able to bowl long stints? Because you've got Anderson, Broad, Ben Stokes is possibly going to be in prison by the time India play because he's got his court appearance coming up. After Anderson and Broad, there's the young bowlers are not developing as good as I would like as an England fan. And when a player comes in, they don't give him a chance after he's had a bad couple of tests. They don't give him a chance to come back. And there are some good bowlers out there who've had some decent spells. We're just not. Now, I think Plunkett is also past his best as well because he does play a lot of first class cricket for his county, just Durham. But you've got the Curran brothers, Tom and Sam. I think Tom Curran should deserve a call up to the England main side. He's been tearing it up in Bordeaux County. He's earned his place in the IPL. Liam Plunkett, he's decent, But we have to see. We have to see on that one. I'm not going to pass judgment on. Bear in mind how bad this team has performed in Australia and New Zealand. A lot of changes have to be made. But here's the funny thing: my surname is also Curran. Also my name as well. Thought I'd get that one in there. Share the same surname. Funny. I think he will do well. He's got a young brother Sam as well. They're both predicted to be, if they're anything like a Jimmy Anderson, a Brett Lee, a Zahir Khan type bowler who can have a career that long and take that many wickets, then they're going to be amazing cricketers in this day and age. I think they're projected to be pretty good. But we have to see how he copes in India in the heat and on the Indian wickets in the IPL. That'll be interesting to see how he does. It's not just Rabada; it's Mitchell Starc as well. I mean, Rabada, he can be hit and miss. Rabada, he is exceptionally quick. He can bounce the ball. He can unsettle the batsman. Mitchell Starc clearly wasn't fully fit in the Test series either. That South Africa Australia Test series has had a big impact on the IPL, massive impact on the IPL for a variety of reasons. But it is what it is. But it is worrying that your best Kolkata Knight Riders' best bowler is 19, 20 years old. That is worrying when you're resting your hopes on your bowling seam attack on a teenager who hasn't had to bowl in subcontinental conditions on flat wickets. Yeah, I have to agree. I don't like Warner either. I've got Australian mates who don't like him. I've got cricket fans. I know a lot of people who like cricket, and Warner is the least popular person. I think he's the most hated cricketer ever. I'll be very, very surprised after this year is up if the IPL, whatever team bids for him, and if he ever plays first class ever again. I'll be. But it's time for the cricket authorities and the cricketing playing nations to really, take the issue of ball tampering, match fixing, spot fixing, and general issues of player discipline far more seriously than they have the previous years. Because the ICC is not governing the game very well. The ICC is got a very interesting relationship with all its constituent nations. I think Warner's probably the most hated sportsman. But here's the funny thing: Conor McGregor's not very well liked by Irishmen either. A lot of Irishmen don't like Conor McGregor anymore. I think the difference between Warner and McGregor is Warner hasn't. Well, actually, no, Warner has actually assaulted people. He headbutted Bairstow. I forgot about that. Or Joe Root. He punched Joe Root and headbutted Bairstow, I think. And Cook. He's not as hated as Lance Armstrong. We'll give him that. But he's trying to push the hatred. He is an outstandingly talented sportsman, but it's very hard to see him ever playing the sport professionally ever again. I personally can't see how he can. There are those that are forgiving, but Warner's had so many minor indiscretions that have been building up over a long time. To allow him back into the sport would be to reward bad behaviour, and cricket seems to have a habit of not remembering what's gone on before. You would think that Hansi Cronje and the match fixing scandal in the late 90s would have been a watershed moment. Match fixing. We mentioned Srisanth this evening. The Pakistani team in 2010 against England. We had Atherton in 94 with the dirt in the pocket, ball tampering. It keeps happening. Cricket is a sport that seems to forget the issues of 10, 20, 30, 40, and the mistakes that they've made before, and they have failed to learn from them. This has to be the watershed moment. It has to be. It can be nothing else. This has to be the watershed moment, because Azradin. You see now we could list him out the most hated people in sport now. Yeah, but Hansi Cronje, I mean, his death, obviously, it is what it is. People say there's an assassination conspiracy and there was organised crime involved, which there was, but his death is surrounded by conspiracy theories as Hansi Cronje. And knowing the amount of South Africans I do, it is still a very divisive subject. His name, the whole scandal, is still a very divisive subject when it comes to South African sport. And because he really sold out a country that was already trying to heal from apartheid, and he did what he did was so damaging to a country trying to rebuild its image abroad to the wider world. But no, cricket seems to forget about Hansi Cronje and what happened 18 years ago when he died, not 20 years ago when he was caught. They seem to forget the whole Hansi Cronje scandal, which is, I think, ludicrous how they can, in a generation, completely forget the lessons they have learned. Completely, it's bewildering to me as a fan how cricket has completely failed to learn the lessons of the previous 20, 30 years. It just makes me go and scratch my head and go, what are you doing? But it is what it is. But his excuse that the devil made him do it, that is ultimate. And he lied also to a parliamentary inquiry. The South African, much like the Australians and us have over here, parliamentary inquiry is put in front of Parliament, and he lied to elected representatives of the South African Parliament into the Sports Committee and the Policing Committee. He lied to them. So it is what it is. But no, cricket seems to amaze me how it doesn't remember the lessons it should have learned. It continues to amaze me even now, and I've been watching cricket since 1992, 93, 94, something like that. Early 90s. Amazed. My friend's nickname's the Devil, but I'm not having teams going with him. But I'll take, it's 9:30 now, so I said 9:30. I would probably stop. It hasn't been a very busy live stream tonight because it's a Friday and more people are out. So we've worked out Friday nights don't work for live stream as well as other nights. But I'll take a couple more questions and then I'm going to say good night and I'm going to do my thing. So, any more questions from anyone? No more questions? No? Because we've spoken a lot about ice hockey earlier on in the live stream and Conor McGregor and now cricket. It depends where you sit. I sat underneath the media centre. I think it all comes down to where you sit and also the weather conditions. It's not the worst cricket ground in the world, but it does need a few improvements in my eyes, Lords. I would say the pavilion end is the members' end, so I would say the second tier of the Edrich stand is probably the best place. But it was a good experience. But I will warn you, the food and drink are expensive at Lords, and they have gone up in price since I went there. But it is a very interesting ground. It's got a lot of history to it. I was at the media end is the nursery end, basically. The media centre is the nursery end. It's not hard to get to. It's only if you remember you have to wear your tie and everything. There isn't really a dress code as such, but you can't wear fancy dress. That's it. You just have, if you go in like a nice jacket and not smart casual, I think is the best way. But there isn't a dress code, just no fancy dress. So the Barmy Army won't be there, which is sad because the Barmy Army I think makes English cricket. But no, what's the most obscure sport on the planet then? But there is, the dress code is smart casual, is what I would advise. Don't. There is a sport played in Melbourne by about 100 people on the street. Trugo, not Joe. You can go with right. Trugo. Okay. Trugo. Melbourne seems to be a very interesting city of obscureness. There seems to be many, many obscure things happening in. There's just been many weird things happening in Melbourne. Right. The dress code for Lords, I would say the best thing is smart casual, something that's comfortable, and just go and enjoy the day, really. But it is definitely a site that has, you have to go and see if you're a cricket fan or a sports fan. It's one of the best sporting arenas in the world. It's one of the most historical. Right. Okay. Good night, everyone, or good morning, depending where you are in the world. I'm going to call it a night. I've got a few bits and pieces to do. So, but I want to say thank you to you guys who were involved in the live stream. Some good questions. I'll let you make your music, Mr. Neptunian. I'll let you make your music. But I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to have a quick shower and then I'm going to go to the pub. So I'm going to have some beer, and I am going to have some more live streams in the next couple of days. Thank you for your involvement, guys. Really appreciate it. It wasn't the busiest live stream we've had, but it was a good little one. We've had some good questions. It was a slow starter, but live streams always seem to be that way for me. They always seem to be slow starters. But I really appreciate all your involvement every time, and you always come with some good questions. And you give me some more video ideas, so I've got a lot of research to do for the next couple of days. And keep your eyes peeled for my cricket profiles of my favourite 11 players to make my in London. I don't live in London, so I don't have any pub recommendations for you in London. That's a flaw in me. There are loads of pubs around Lords. You will find them. I have no personal recommendations though for that area of London. Sorry. But thank you very much. Good night, and I shall have more videos for you tomorrow.